The night had been long, the kind that seemed to stretch forever under the dim glow of chandeliers and the soft hum of background jazz. Elena moved briskly between tables, balancing a silver tray heavy with champagne flutes and half-finished desserts. The Grand Meridian Hotel was always full of people pretending not to notice each other, businessmen in tailored suits, couples in quiet arguments, tourists lost in the glitter of wealth. She was invisible to all of them, as waitresses often are. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, plastered on her practiced smile, and approached a corner table near the large window overlooking the ocean. There sat a man in a dark suit, alone, staring not at his food but at the night beyond the glass. He'd been there for over an hour, ordering nothing but black coffee. Something about him made the other staff uneasy, the calm stillness, the way his eyes followed everything without seeming to move. Elena cleared her throat softly. "Would you like me to warm your coffee, sir?" The man turned his head slowly, studying her. His eyes were sharp, cold almost, but not unkind. "You're the only one who's asked me that tonight," he said. His voice was quiet, low, and measured. She gave a small, polite laugh. "Most people like their coffee hot." He tilted his head. "Most people don't notice when it goes cold." That was the first moment something flickered between them. Curiosity, maybe recognition, though she couldn't place it. She took the cup, went to the kitchen, refilled it, and returned with her usual grace. "Thank you," he said, as she set it down. "What's your name?" "Elena." "Elena," he repeated, like he was testing the sound. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years. She hesitated, unsure if she was allowed to talk so freely. "I started when my mother got sick. Hospital bills, you know." He nodded once, not prying further. His eyes drifted back to the ocean. "I imagine it's not easy, serving people who think they're better than you." She smiled, faintly. "I stopped thinking about it. People are people, some are kind, some aren't. My job is to keep the plates full and the glasses clean." He looked at her then, really looked, as though he saw something in her that the world had missed. "And what if someone offered you a chance to stop doing that?" She blinked. "Stop doing what?" "Serving people." She laughed lightly. "Then I'd ask how long it would last." He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I'll pay you $100,000 a month," he said quietly, as if he were stating a simple fact. "Come work for me at my house." For a heartbeat, she thought she'd misheard. The noise of clinking cutlery and soft music seemed to fade. "I'm sorry, what? I need someone I can trust," he continued. "Someone who doesn't ask questions, but isn't afraid of the truth when she hears it." She looked around, half expecting one of her coworkers to be smirking nearby, waiting for her reaction. As this, some kind of joke? He smiled. The first smile she'd seen from him all evening. "I don't joke about money." Elena's heart began to race. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "I've watched you since I arrived. You treat every guest the same. You never rush, never complain. You refill a stranger's coffee without being asked. That tells me more about a person than any resume." She stared at him, unsure if she should feel flattered or frightened. "And what exactly would I be doing at your house?" "That," he said, standing up slowly, leaving a $100 bill under his cup, "is something we'll discuss if you say yes." He picked up his coat, gave her one last look, and added, "You have until tomorrow." Then he walked out, leaving her frozen beside the empty table, her hand still hovering near the untouched cup of coffee. The salt air drifted through the open door as she stared after him, wondering if she'd just met opportunity, or disaster, dressed in a black suit. The car that came for Elena the next morning was sleek, silent, and black, the kind that looked out of place on the narrow streets of her neighborhood. She stood on the curb with her worn duffel bag, trying to convince herself she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. The driver, a tall man in a gray suit, said nothing as he opened the door for her. Inside, the air smelled faintly of leather and cedar. The ride stretched for hours, past the city's edge and into the countryside where the roads grew quieter, the trees thicker. Every mile felt like a line being erased between who she was and whoever she might be becoming. Finally, the car turned through a pair of iron gates that opened automatically, revealing a long, winding drive lined with cypress trees. At the end of it stood the mansion, vast and pale, with tall windows and ivy crawling up its sides like green veins. Elena stepped out, feeling impossibly small. The front doors opened before she could knock. A housekeeper in a crisp uniform greeted her with a polite nod. "Mr. Donovan is expecting you. This way, please." Inside, the air was cool and still. The floors gleamed, and her footsteps echoed faintly as she followed the woman through long hallways adorned with paintings and marble statues. Everything was immaculate, but strangely lifeless, as though no one had really lived there for years. The housekeeper led her to a guest suite large enough to be its own apartment. A vase of white lilies sat on the table, their scent filling the air. "If you need anything," the woman said, "press the button by the bed." Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She wandered to the window. The estate stretched out endlessly, gardens, fountains, a distant glimpse of the sea. For a moment, she almost forgot the reason she was there. Then her reflection in the glass reminded her. A hotel waitress, standing in a stranger's mansion, waiting for a billionaire to tell her why. That evening, she was summoned to dinner. The dining room was enormous, lit by a chandelier that looked like a cluster of falling stars. The table could have seated 20, but only 2 places were set. Donovan sat at the far end, dressed casually in a linen shirt, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said as she entered. "I said I would." He gestured for her to sit. "I wasn't sure. Most people would have thought I was insane." "I did," she said honestly. A faint smile touched his lips. "And yet here you are." Dinner was served by silent staff who appeared and vanished like ghosts. The food was exquisite. Roasted sea bass, asparagus, wine that shimmered ruby under the light, but Elena could barely taste it. She felt like she was dining in a dream she didn't belong to. Donovan asked her about her life, her childhood, her mother, her work at the hotel. He never interrupted, never pitied her, only listened with a stillness that was almost unnerving. When she asked about him, he gave little away. "You must have other staff here," she said, glancing around the empty room. "I used to," he replied. "I prefer quiet now. Noise makes me forget what I'm listening for." "And what's that?" "The truth," he said simply. The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. After dinner, he stood. "You won't have many duties," he said. "You'll live here, comfortably. The main thing I ask is that you join me for dinner each night. Conversation is the only payment I need." Elena frowned. "You're paying me $100,000 a month to talk to you." He met her eyes. "To listen. To remind me that the world isn't made entirely of liars and ghosts." Before she could answer, he turned away and disappeared down a dark hallway, leaving her once again in silence. The candles flickered. Somewhere far off, a door closed softly, echoing through the mansion. Elena sat for a long time, staring at the untouched dessert before her. The promise of money no longer felt real, it felt like bait in a trap she couldn't see. But something in his eyes, something unspoken, told her that beneath the strangeness, there was a story he hadn't yet found the courage to tell. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she wanted to hear it. Days slipped into weeks inside the mansion, and time began to lose its edges. Elena found herself waking to birdsong instead of alarms, to sunlight spilling across the marble floor instead of the dull flicker of her apartment ceiling. She had everything she could need: food, books, music, clothes that arrived folded in boxes without her asking, and yet, a strange emptiness filled the house. Each evening, as promised, she dined with Mr. Donovan. Their conversations wandered from philosophy to childhood memories, from art to loneliness. He never flirted, never crossed a line. It was as if he was studying her, not with desire, but with quiet curiosity, like a man peering at something fragile he didn't want to break. Sometimes, when he spoke, his voice would trail off mid-sentence, lost in memory. Once, he asked her, "Do you believe a single act can change the course of a life?" She had smiled and said she supposed it could. He didn't reply. Still, Elena couldn't shake the sense that the mansion was keeping secrets. There were doors that stayed locked, wings of the house she never saw, and rooms she was told not to enter. The staff, the few who came and went, spoke little, their eyes always cast down. And Donovan himself often disappeared for hours, leaving her to wander the echoing halls alone. One rainy night, curiosity got the better of her. She had finished dinner early, Donovan had excused himself with a distracted expression and a murmur about unfinished business. As thunder rolled over the estate, Elena wandered through the darkened corridors, her bare feet silent against the marble. She passed portraits she hadn't noticed before, all women, all painted with uncanny realism. Some looked familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she walked. The hall ended at a locked door, heavy oak with iron hinges. The keyhole gleamed faintly in the light of a nearby candle. Something in her chest tightened. Every instinct told her to turn back, to respect the boundaries of her strange new life. But then a thought whispered through her mind. He's hiding something, and it's about you. Her hand trembled as she tried the handle. It didn't budge, but just as she turned away, she heard a faint sound, footsteps, then silence. She pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. Then, faintly, the scrape of a chair, the rustle of fabric. A nearby table held a ring of keys. She hesitated only a moment before taking them. The third one fit. The lock clicked. Inside, the room smelled of turpentine and old canvas. She froze. Paintings, dozens, maybe hundreds, covered the walls, stacked against one another, leaning in piles. And every single one was of her. Not perfect replicas, not flattering portraits, raw, emotional, almost haunted renderings of her face. Some captured her smiling, others crying, others simply staring into nothing. Her hotel uniform, her hair tied back, even her chipped nail polish. Her breath caught in her throat. What is this? The sound of footsteps behind her made her spin around. Donovan stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain hammered against the windows, the thunder distant but unrelenting. I told myself you wouldn't come in here, he said softly. But I knew you would. Elena's voice shook. Why are there paintings of me? How do you even? He stepped closer, his gaze distant, almost fragile. Because I've known your face for years. She shook her head. That's not possible. It is, he said. Before I was anyone, before the money, I was a man sitting on a street corner, starving, invisible. One night, I went into that hotel. I had nothing. No home, no name worth saying. And a waitress. You gave me food. You paid for it yourself. You told me no one should go hungry. Do you remember? She stared at him, memory flickering like a flame in her mind. A winter night, a shivering man, refusing her pity. A bowl of soup she paid for with her tips. She had forgotten. I built everything I have after that night, he said. But I never forgot your face. I searched for it everywhere, in art, in dreams. And when I saw you again at the hotel, I thought maybe the world was giving me one more chance to say thank you. Elena's knees felt weak. The paintings blurred as tears filled her eyes. So all this, the money, the job, this house, it was all because of one meal. He nodded, almost ashamed. I wanted to repay what can't be repaid. She looked around the room again, at the hundreds of versions of herself, the waitress, the stranger, the ghost of a memory. You didn't need to do this, she whispered. He looked at her, sorrow in his eyes. You're wrong. You're the only real thing I have left. Elena stood in the center of the studio, surrounded by her own painted faces. The rain outside had slowed to a whisper, as though even the storm was holding its breath. Mr. Donovan sat on a wooden stool near the window, his back slightly hunched, the light from a single lamp tracing the tired lines on his face. Neither of them spoke for a long time. When she finally found her voice, it came out quiet but steady. You've been living inside a memory, she said. All this time. He didn't look up. Memories are safer than people. They don't leave. They don't change their minds. Elena's gaze drifted to a canvas still wet with paint, her likeness again, but softer this time, her eyes lifted toward an unseen light. It wasn't just obsession she saw now, it was longing. You didn't owe me anything, she said gently. It was just soup, just kindness. He turned to her then, and for the first time, she saw the weight of loneliness in him. You say that as if kindness is small, he said. But you were the first person to look at me and not see failure. I built empires after that, and every time someone shook my hand, I saw you instead. Elena swallowed hard. You found me again, but what is this, really? Gratitude, guilt, a cage disguised as a gift. Donovan's expression faltered. I wanted to give you everything I could never give myself: safety, peace, purpose. She shook her head. You can't buy peace for someone else. And you can't heal by holding on to ghosts. For a moment, silence pressed between them, heavy and raw. Then he stood, walking to a desk in the corner. From a drawer, he took out a thick envelope, sealed with wax. He placed it on the table beside her. Your contract, he said quietly. And something else. A deed to shares in my company. 10%. It's yours, whether you stay or leave. Elena stared at the envelope. I don't want your money. It isn't payment, he said. It's acknowledgement. You changed my life, Elena. You reminded me what it means to be human. That's worth more than all of this. Her throat tightened. Then let me give something back. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. You already have. You came back into my story. They stood there, facing each other, two people tied by a single moment years ago that neither had expected to matter. She reached out and closed the envelope, sliding it back toward him. Keep it, she said. Do something real with it. Start a foundation. Feed someone else who needs it. That's how you repay kindness, not by trapping it, but by passing it on. His eyes glistened, and for the first time, he seemed to exhale fully, as though a weight had been lifted from his chest. You sound like you've been the rich one all along, he murmured. She smiled, soft but sure. Maybe I am. By morning, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, the sea calm beyond the garden. When Elena came downstairs, Donovan was nowhere to be found. On the dining table, beside a steaming cup of coffee, sat a letter. She unfolded it carefully. Elena, thank you for reminding me that gratitude isn't a debt, it's a gift we carry forward. The company shares are still yours. Use them, or don't. I'm leaving for a while. Maybe somewhere no one knows my name. Maybe somewhere I can start over. Please remember one thing. You saved a man who didn't believe he deserved saving. Live freely. Live kindly. That's all the repayment I need. D. Tears welled in her eyes as she read. Outside, the first light of dawn was rising, gold over the water. She folded the letter, slipped it into her bag, and walked out of the mansion. The gravel crunched under her shoes, each step carrying her closer to the gate, closer to her own life again. At the end of the drive, she turned once more to look back. The mansion stood silent against the sky, its windows gleaming like mirrors, reflecting, not imprisoning. Elena smiled faintly, whispering to the wind, "Goodbye, Mr. Donovan." Then she walked toward the road, the horizon opening before her, her heart lighter than it had been in years.